I'm just going to piggyback on that, and anyone who's already in education, data has really just overtaken our lives, and it's very important. And we also spend a lot of time with data because I know I want my students to perform well on Azalea and on Ames. I just also think at the same time we need to keep a balance, and as much as I want my students to do well, and as much as I'm going to analyze that data to make sure that they do well and that it can guide my instruction, I also constantly need to remind myself that that is a short-term goal for me. And I think that that is our long-term goal. We're really trivializing what we do. Last year, the first year of the 4-hour model implementation, last year was my most difficult year teaching ever. I went from teaching 5th grade to teaching a 7th and 8th grade self-contained class, where the rest of junior high switched around to their science teacher, their math teacher, their language arts teacher, social studies teacher. I had a combination class of 7th and 8th grade students who stayed with me all day, and it was very, very difficult. And part of what was difficult about it is I realized that those language learners, and it was also my best year teaching, but those language learners have struggled a lot in the mainstream classrooms, and part of it is when you're not proficient in a language, you're not going to perform academically as well as the other children. So as children get older, some of them form coping skills, and for teenagers, some of those coping skills are misbehaving, getting attention however they can get it. So that was definitely a challenge for me. It was the first year I never experienced the honeymoon phase at the beginning of the year, which I normally relish. Normally you start off each school year and you say jump, and they're like, how high? And well, I got that maybe for like the first 15 minutes. But I mean, I definitely grew a lot as a teacher, but what helped me through that challenge more than anything is helping kids to form positive identities. And Dr. Taylor, we kind of laugh sometimes because some of those kids that were in and out of the office all the time for previous years, by the end of the school year, they identified themselves as, well, like Sergio was the poet. That was his new identity. I mean, this little like tough kid, he's a poet. And I had kids that became songwriters, and you know, if some kids, you know, perform that positive identity as like athletes. But I mean, when you're a teenager, well, even adults, we do the same thing. We're searching for that identity. I mean, that's why, you know, some teenagers end up pregnant. I mean, I'm a mother now. That's an identity, but hopefully we want to teach our kids to find these healthier, more positive self-identities. And I think we definitely can influence that in the classroom. And to me, I want my children leaving the classroom identifying themselves as readers, as writers. And yes, at the same time, I want them to do well on that test. But I think it's more than that.
Hello, panel. My name's Jay. I'm an elementary education major. And if it's okay with you, I kind of thought of a question like 8 minutes ago. Is it cool if I ask you that one instead of the one that's on the sheet? Yes? Okay. All right. It seems that all the schools have plans set up for Spanish-speaking ELLs, but what happens if some kid moves into your school from like Madagascar or Iceland or Uzbekistan? What happens then?
We've got that. We went from a school that had majority of our ESL population were Spanish speakers, and 3 years ago, the refugees started coming in. When you have major refugee support groups here, you end up with a larger refugee population. So what do you do with that? Well, for one thing, you use the target language. You form groups. You do a lot of picture drawing, which is probably just a good teaching strategy. But we have kids, I have a class of 20 students, and of my 20 kids, I probably have 8 different languages in that classroom. So not only are you dealing with different languages, but very, very different cultures. So you learn to do group work, you know, get things in very small chunks for kids, and it's really funny because I only have 3 Spanish speakers in that class. One's from Cuba, because there's a lot of Cuban refugees, and then my other 2 kids are from Mexico. But it's funny, I have my kids that are from Iraq and Africa, and a lot of them that are speaking Spanish, so they're picking up the Spanish besides, you know, the English. But you just, you know, do a lot of pictures and a lot of simple vocabulary, and then they get it. And one of the things that's interesting about languages other than Spanish, in order for them to survive here, they have to learn English. So they can't go home and turn on the Burmese TV channel or pick up the Burmese newspaper. They have, so they're picking up the survival English a little bit faster anyway.
I'll just add that, you know, that's brought up sometimes as an argument around bilingual education is, well, we can't have bilingual education for every language group represented. No, you can't. But I think that a crucial question to ask is what I think was brought up by Herrera teachers is you have to ask yourself, what is the community where I'm working? What is the community of this school and what does it need? And then how can we meet that? In some cases, it's a dual language program. In other cases, it may not be. In Tempe, we don't have a dual language program that's currently functioning for several reasons. But we still have those immigrant students. I was coaching a 5th grade teacher this year in the very beginning who had French Somali students come in. He knew very rudimentary French from high school. But what did he have to do? He had to get up and start researching and brushing up on that French and looking for websites and pulling books. And especially for some of the more obscure languages, it's not easy. But my number one thing I can tell you is, first of all, if you can't, and this would answer the other question as well, get out there and travel. If you haven't already, you guys have to get out of this country and travel. You've got to see some other places. You've got to experience the disorientation of not knowing a language. What does that feel like before you can ever empathize with one of your ELL students? And then, when you come back home, you've got to continue learning and researching. You've got to ask people from that culture, hook up with community groups, talk to your ELL coach. I bring in as many resources as I can. I'm always learning new things about cultures and languages. It's an ongoing thing. There's never one answer or one program that will solve that problem. It's an ongoing thing. But there are resources out there. You know, there are refugee groups that help a lot of the immigrants when they move here. You can find mentors. We hook our students up with mentors in their primary language whenever possible. So again, look for your resources, dig them up. You got to do that groundwork yourself sometimes.
Just adding to that, the distinction between what you're doing. So if you want to have a program, and I think every school could look at this and decide one way or the other, is teaching 2 languages. It could be Spanish, obviously in Arizona, that's going to be big. It could be sign, it could be now, it could be what you have the resources to deliver a second language in. Regardless, then it's about language learning, how human beings learn and how human beings learn language. And you've been hearing a whole bunch of stuff from the teachers on this panel about how language is learned, which is not part of the 4-hour training. It's really not.
What I would say is that our program, as it's already stated, is more or less tailored to the community that we serve. We do have other schools in our district that have large populations of refugee students, and they use the English as a second language model. They use a lot of sheltered English strategies, and as stated, they bring in speakers of the native language. They spend extra resources having information translated into other languages so that parents can understand. So you just focus your energy to communicate with the population that you have using English as a second language strategies.
I would also say to find a school that supports you, find a principal that supports you, find a school that has supportive teachers, supportive counselors, supportive psychologists, this is a true story. At the beginning of the school year, we had a student who entered school, only spoke Navajo, and of course they think, oh, let's go to Sonia, she knows how to speak Navajo, she's Navajo. No, I don't know how to speak Navajo. However, the psychologist said, you know, like, do you know anybody who can speak Navajo? And this was like right there, right before the school day started, and I, you know, thinking, and I said, no, I don't. Oh, actually, no, I do know. My mother speaks Navajo, so we call my mom on the cell phone. And just the support by the psychologist, just calming the student down, just knowing how to, like, just, you know, just pat on the shoulder, everything's okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. And, you know, good, passionate people in your school is what students need. They can help you overcome anything. We have parent liaisons at Aguilar who just help you whenever you need anything. They translate, they interpret, they do whatever you need in order for you to instruct successfully, in order for that student to be successful. And also, oh my gosh, I lost my thought process. I'm